I am pleased to introduce today's speaker, Kevin Martin. Kevin is a veteran broadcasting executive who brought experience, energy, and excitement with him to Cleveland when he moved from California to become president and CEO of Ideastream Public Media in 2017. On any given day, he is leading through rapidly changing media landscape, and he does so with collaboration at the center of his work. Ideastream Public Media serves the people of Northeast Ohio as a trusted and dynamic multimedia source. Today, they are home to 5 public television stations, WKSU, Northeast Ohio's NPR news and information radio station, WCLV, Northeast Ohio's classical music radio station, and Jazz NEO, which you just heard when you logged on, the region's only full-time HD jazz station and streaming service. We are thrilled to have him today to tell us more. So without further ado, please let me introduce Kevin Martin.
Well, thank you, Angela. And I appreciate you playing Jazz Neo. I'm very proud of that service. We just launched about 2 years ago. And so that's been a great success. And we've watched our audience grow significantly. So I've been thinking, how can I possibly explain the year we've had in just 15 minutes? Now, actually, 13 minutes. And so I'm going to try my best. I've gotten a little better with each interview I've had to be a little more succinct. And so I'm going to try to make that happen today. So first of all, let me just give you a little background in terms of public media has been in the headlines quite a bit. I mean, you've had to really been in a cave to miss it since really January 20th. And so just to bring you up to speed, the current administration had issued a rescission order. Now, there's a lot of things that's happened in between, but I'm just going to skip to the end. The current administration has issued a rescission order to Congress to rescind previously appropriated funds to public media for fiscal year 2026 and 2027. And that measure passed in both the House and the Senate by very narrow margins in terms of votes, but it passed. And so what that means for public media as a whole across the country is a loss of upwards of $600 million that goes to all public media stations, both television and radio across the country. And what it means for Ideastream is close to $2.8 million that it affects us immediately in our fiscal year 2026. And our fiscal year starts October 1st. Now, we're in the middle of our budget process. Well, actually, we're probably 2/3 through our budget process. So we are working through scenarios and things like that. But I will tell you, we've had the strongest financial year ever in Ideastream's history. And that, of course, is from the generous support of our individuals, major donors, but also corporate and foundation support. And so it's been tremendous. And I'll just say, I'll give a plug for Northeast Ohio, because I've worked in a lot of markets in the Bay Area, in the Twin Cities, in Dallas, Fort Worth, in DC, and there is no city, I believe, that is more philanthropically inclined than Northeast Ohio. The Twin Cities comes close, but not. I think Northeast Ohio wins the prize for sure. Now, for us, it's really, I think, almost a tale of two pathways. For us, on a local level, we've done really well, and we're doing well. We have a healthy endowment. And as I mentioned, we've had a very strong financial year. And that's the short-term prognosis. But the rescission will be there not only next year, but the year after, and perhaps years to come. And so we've been focused on a sustainability plan. And for us, what that means is continuing to build our endowment so that we can sustain the services that so many Northeast Ohioans have enjoyed for the past 60 years. And Angela, I don't know if you mentioned WVIZ, but that we're having the 60th anniversary of WVIZ this year. And so, as you know, Ideastream is a conglomerate of a lot of different media services. And that diversified portfolio has really served us well. We're seeing a surge in support for WCOV, our classical station, and a surge in support for our Jazz Neo streaming service. And so all of that has been great. We're looking forward to that. But the long-term prognosis will be how the PBS service and NPR will come together for the greater good of the country. Now, what I suspect in my 30 years in public media, this is unprecedented, of course. I never thought that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting would end before my lifetime. But what I suspect is PBS and NPR will be establishing their own kind of trust funds. They've raised lots of money, and they're aggressively raising money now. I suspect they'll have their own trust funds, and they'll need to establish their own relationships with stations across the country. How that happens, I don't know, but we're going to have to figure that out. And I think for the year, this next year, we're going to be plugged in. We'll be at the table thinking about how we will relate to the PBS programming and NPR programming. And what that means is who's going to produce it, who's going to acquire it, and who's going to distribute it, the national content. But for the past 5 years, we have been focused on moving more toward local. And I think that's been a great plan. I wish I could say that I knew this was coming. And so that's was part of the grand plan. But it really has served us well because I really do believe that the balance of national versus local is going to shift pretty dramatically with all stations going forward. And I think what we're going to see is stations who can produce high quality local programming, whether it's in the music or local news and information, will do so. Ideastream is equipped to do that, and we have been doing it for many, many years. But we're going to really kind of put our foot on the gas and make sure that we can continue to deliver kind of robust local news and information. But what I mean by local, I would say it's hyper local, but it's also regional, and it's also statewide. Because since Ideastream is the largest public media provider in the state by far, we are trusted to do a lot of the statewide services on behalf of all of the stations in Ohio. And there are 8 PBS stations in Ohio, including Ideastream, and there are 13 public radio stations in Ohio. And we have 30 staff members who are at the State House that covers the legislature, both the House, the Senate, the executive branch. We also cover the Ohio Supreme Court, but we also have an editorial coverage of our legislature as well. And that's a team of 5 people called the State House News Bureau. And so we provide that service for all the stations in Ohio and for all 12 million Ohioans that live here. And so we are planning to continue that and really actually investing more in those services. And let's see, what have I forgotten? Well, I would say that one of the things that we are looking forward to doing is just keeping things status quo through this year, because we do not believe it will be in our best interest to have any radical changes before we know what's going to happen on the national level. There's a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty that needs to be worked out throughout the year. And as I said, we're going to be at the table. Ideastream has always had a leadership position within public media on both the television and radio side. I certainly have been called into meetings already to discuss the future of public media. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that the future can be bright, but I think, it's really going to depend on who's left standing. And for me, one of my biggest concerns are the smaller stations that are serving the rural areas. They're going to feel the effects first and the deepest if they're able to survive. And so then we have to think, how do we begin to either collaborate, consolidate, and to make sure that those communities are not left out. And so that, I'm sure, will be part of our thinking. And as we begin to have these conversations with our fellow Ohioans in terms of our who's in the media business, but also those who uh, can help us in terms of just collaborating in terms of different partnerships. So we're going to look through all that.
Collaboration seems to have been a key of your leadership, and the way that you've approached your leadership here at Ideastream too. Can you give a couple examples of when you've collaborated with other organizations, with key partnerships?
Well, I'd love to take the full credit for that, but really, it's been my predecessor, and I would say my predecessor has been Jerry Wareham and Kit Jensen. Kit Jensen was the COO, and Jerry Wareham was the general manager, and I inherited really what they've established as the DNA of Ideastream, in terms of their vision has always been that Ideastream should be a great community partner that strengthens the services that we do throughout Northeast Ohio and the state. And so I was lucky enough to be able to inherit that and to really build on it, going forward. As you probably know, WVIZ and WCPN were the first stations to come together, and that's unusual. And I know this because I worked at the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for 7 years, and part of my job was to bring television and radio stations together, and they weren't buying it. I would talk to board members, I would talk to general managers, and they're fiercely independent. And so what Jerry and Kit were able to do was really revolutionary and just kind of set the tone, I think, for the willingness to come together after they found themselves trying to raise money with the same institutions and the same foundation. They said, we might as well come together. There'll be some efficiencies that we can realize, and also we'll be able to provide a better service. And since then, we've been able to acquire WCLV, the classical station you mentioned, and the jazz service. And of course, we've been able to really bring in the statewide services in a big way. And so those are the things I think that have happened more recently. And we're looking at other ways to collaborate and to partner with other entities.
How did your recent merger impact your ability to weather these current challenges?
Oh, it's been significant. I think it's the thing that has separated Ideastream from all of the other public media institutions across the country. In our trade journal, which is called Current, we see week after week, day to day, major market stations that are laying off 15% and 20% of their staff because of the rescission. We do not have to do that. We have a diversified portfolio. We have a healthy endowment, and we've made smart choices in the past that has not put us at risk. And those smart choices we haven't always known they were going to be smart at the time, because there is always pressure to do the latest thing. And I'll give you an example. WNYC went really aggressively into podcasting. And podcasting, maybe 10 years ago, seemed like that was going to be the thing that took over public radio. And they invested millions and millions of dollars in podcasting. Well, that turned out not to be a great idea. And there was pressure, I think, here within Ideastream, I think from our staff. We need to do more podcasts. We did some. We experimented with some, and some were very successful. Living for We is one, but we are very selective and very calculated in the things that we've done. We did not go that aggressively like a lot of stations did in San Francisco and in Denver And what has happened is there's millions and millions of podcasts out there. It's hard to break through. It's hard to maintain. And they've had to kind of lay off a lot of folks who were associated with the podcast. And that's just one example.
How is Ideastream working with some of the other public stations to maybe share these best practices or kind of support each other through these changing times?
Well, Ideastream has always been kind of the touchstone for a lot of public media. I've gotten, I would say, I was going to say dozens of calls, but really hundreds of calls in the past year from my colleagues, general managers, because of the choices we've made, because we're not suffering financial blows in the same way that others are. And we're always willing to help. That's the great thing about public media is that there's not any real competition between us. We all want each other to survive and to thrive. And so it's been very generous. And I would say here in Ohio, it's been even more generous than I've experienced in California or Texas.
I don't know you well, but you seem to have a very steady and calm type of leadership. And what are things that while you're weathering the storm that you want people to know about your day-to-day life and leadership?
That I can be calm on camera, but off camera, I have sleepless nights. No, the media business is not one for the faint of heart. It's not, I don't care if you're in commercial media or non-commercial media. It's gone through some really rapid changes, certainly through my career. I remember when cable came on board and you had 500 channels and everyone asked, well, do you need public media anymore? Well, what happened is that really strengthened public media because suddenly all the ratings were dispersed all over the place, and our ratings in public media were consistently higher than channels like CNN. And so that really increased the value of our underwriting. And then we went through the analog to digital, which gave us so much more capacity to provide more programming. And then you had, of course, streaming services now that we're dealing with and that we've had to participate in. And all of that means you need a different workforce or you need to complement your workforce at times. And so all this is happening, and we have to make sure that we are continuing to serve Northeast Ohioans in Ohio in a way that consumer habits have changed, and they've changed quite a bit. We all know that just from our own experience, whether you're listening to us on smart speaker, whether your phone, like my 20 some odd year old son, everything is through his phone. And so that's his access point. And sometimes it requires different content to be provided for that type of consumption. And we've had to learn about those things. And that's one of the first things I was charged with. And when I took this job was to take Ideastream from a broadcaster to beyond in all its various ways that our listeners and viewers expect to access us. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that so far.
Well, it sounds like despite everything, Ideastream is in a position of strength because of smart decisions that have been made, the endowment. But how long do you think the endowment would be able to carry you, considering sort of the unpredictability of what is to come?
Well, I mean, the key to endowment is not to spend it down, but to use the payoff from the endowment to support. Our endowment right now is about $62 million. And we'd probably need at least 3 times that amount to really support us in a way that we wouldn't have to raise 70% of our revenue every year just to accomplish the mission that's in our annual budget. But that's a work in progress. I don't know that will be done under my leadership, but certainly that is something that we are working towards, and we've made tremendous progress toward that end. since I started in 2017. And so I think this is one of the things that we're going to have to continue to focus on is what are those different services that we can provide, that we can collaborate with in terms of widening and broadening our audience. We're not the only organization that's suffering right now. There are a lot of organizations that do such great work that are institutions in Northeast Ohio. And I think we would hate to see them go away. And so the question is there a way for Ideastream to collaborate or to consolidate with those institutions to kind of maintain what they do and to, at the same time, broaden the audience and create more sustainability and greater efficiency for all the above? And, I think those are things that we have to do an analysis to see if it makes sense, if the economics make sense. But I do know that there have been several institutions that have come to us, that have reached out to us. And I think that's part of the role. If we can provide that service, if we can provide that stability and resource, I think we have great back office resources, and I think that's where a lot of smaller, especially smaller organizations suffer. They do not have great HR or accounting or finance or even fundraising. We are pretty good at all those things. And so to the extent that we can partner and collaborate with other institutions to make that happen, then I think it serves everyone well.
Absolutely. How will access to national radio TV programming be impacted? Will it still be produced?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I have absolutely a lot of faith and confidence that you're talking about NPR.
Mhm.
As you may not recall, but NPR got a huge gift back in the early 2000s. It's the Kroc Foundation gift. They were the founders of McDonald's, and it was a $200 million gift. And they've received other big gifts, but I suspect they're going to receive a lot bigger gifts going forward. Um, and that's going to allow them to, I think, establish a trust that will allow them to continue to produce programming like Morning Edition and All Things Considered and all the other things they do, all the podcasts that they do. And I think for those stations who can continue to stay plugged in to them, and that's going to be the question, I think, going forward, is what stations will be able to survive to continue to distribute that programming. They'll still be able to enjoy, the services that they provide. And I think the same is true with PBS. PBS has built quite a large endowment over the past. I was on the board for 6 years, and they're close to $500 million in their endowment. And so I know that they're continuing to be very aggressive in that regard. And so they'll have to establish their own trust. And now both of those entities are member supported entities, meaning stations are the members of both PBS and NPR. And so I imagine there's going to have to be some governance restructuring within the next year. And that's the type of uncertainty that we need to kind of watch play out, because it's going to require a new articles of incorporation, new governance, new thinking about how is content produced, distributed, and acquired, and what does that mean for all the stations that are showing those programs throughout the country.
I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old at home, so PBS is a regular thing in our house. And it's good to know that, even though this is very tumultuous times, that there is still support coming up. So what is it that all of us on the call today can do? I guess donate money, right? But what else can we do to kind of support through this time?
Well, I mean, the support has been so generous. I mean, it's almost hard to say. I mean, what you're going to hear, of course, are on-air campaigns And that's going on now, and it will continue as we've always done, and to ask for support. And we're going to kind of refine our messages because we really think that it really is about sustainability. And of course, we are going to need to continue to raise operating dollars. Hopefully, we can reduce that percentage of dollars that we need to raise every year from 70% to maybe 50%. That way, we're going into the year with our budget knowing that we have a good shot at delivering all of our services. Now, we've been pretty good about delivering our services and raising the money throughout the year. So I want to thank everyone for continuing to support us in our on-air campaigns. So unfortunately, you won't hear those go away. You may hear them maybe be a little longer than usual as we try to get a sense of where we're at financially from a year-to-year basis. And to answer your other question about endowment, our goal is to build our endowment, not to spend it down, because we really believe that that's, like the Cleveland Museum of Art, like the Cleveland Orchestra and the Rock Hall, they all have very large endowments that sustain the organization and allows them to continue to serve Northeast Ohioans, because, they would not be able to provide their services if it just meant, charging day to day on each performance. We all kind of need that support, that endowment support. And I think that's what's unique about Northeast Ohio, and certainly in Cleveland.
And where have you found support in other leaders in Cleveland and other organizations or partnerships in Cleveland? I mean, you've been here for almost 10 years now. Where do you find support to kind of help you through your leadership and facing these challenges?
Well, it's always dangerous to start naming foundations, but there's been so many foundations. I mean, if you walked in the Idea Center, everything is named after every foundation in Northeast Ohio. And I think that's indicative of the type of support that we receive. And it's deep support and it's ongoing support. And we're seeing, I'm hearing from foundation heads today asking how they can help. Now, for a public media provider, that's like gold, to have a foundation say, how can we help? Usually you have to, do a very long and detailed and complex proposal, which still may require that. But it's always great when you get that call and they're asking how they can help. And so, again, I think Northeast Ohio is just really unique in that regard.
Any key leadership takeaways from you that you've noticed or that have surprised you from these recent months?
Well, I think this was really my first CEO. I've been in public media for 30 some odd years, and I never thought I wanted to be a CEO because I've always valued my work-life balance. But I have to say, our executive team is just second to none. I cannot believe the folks that we have around the table. And then if we go throughout the organization, we are so lucky to be able to attract a lot of great talent. Things you see on the air and that you hear on the air is from the talent that we're able to attract. Now, the one thing that's interesting about Ideastream is we are one of those entities that if your ambition and aspiration is to get to a larger market, there's a lot of poaching from us. So a lot of folks come here to get that type of experience and then are snatched away by LA or San Francisco or Boston or New York. And that's fine too, especially if they're staying in public media. So I've learned to kind of understand how that works in terms of the what role that we play, in the system. And I think that has really taught me a lot. And of course, the whole board management thing is new for me, but our trustees are, again, second to none. I've worked with a lot of trustees throughout my career at different stations, but again, our trustees are just absolutely fantastic. And I hope they're listening to that.
Excellent
I
plug.
hope you're right.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and your leadership. It's phenomenal. So we wish you the best on the road ahead.